Oh my goodness, did you guys see all the news for the new Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? I hope you did, because there was a lot to talk about there. And I know I'm not a news type channel for gaming, but man, I am like on cloud 9 with hype right now. And I want to use that hype to do something a little bit special here. So who are all the characters that were not in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and now are in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? Well, those characters are Daisy, Ridley, Wolf, Pichu, Ice Climbers, the Inkling, Pokemon trainers Squirtle and Ivysaur, Young Link, and Snake. And so I'm going to set up a little bit of a challenge for myself here. I'm going to try to find at least one interesting fact for each one of these characters and put it into this video. So let's not waste any more time and let's get started with Daisy. So in my little bubble, I feel like this is common knowledge at this point, but not everybody on the internet is scouring for information about Super Smash Bros. Melee. So for Daisy's sake, I'm going to give you a classic. If you take the camera behind Daisy's head in Super Smash Bros. Melee, you can find a third eye. And why is it even there? Well, it's not a special thing left behind by the developers, it's in fact a bug. One that was even acknowledged by Nintendo themselves after fixing it in the Player's Choice version of Super Smash Bros. Melee. This next one is for Ridley, and this comes from the Super Smash Bros. Brawl episode of Boundary Break. Easily my favorite thing about the entire episode was finding out that Ridley has a heart. Well, Meta Ridley has a heart. It was really subtle in Metroid Prime, but Ridley is supposed to have a texture of a heart at the core of his chest. Hence why you shoot at it in Metroid Prime. But the developers of Super Smash Bros. Brawl probably found it a little bit too crude to have an exposed heart on a character model. And so the final build of the game has a metal plate over his chest. However, if we were to take the camera inside of that chest armor, you can find a texture of the heart, which at no point gets exposed in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, even when you defeat him in story mode. As for the Ice Climbers, I looked inside the models in Super Smash Bros. Brawl and noticed that there's a lot more hair to these character models. And funny enough, in-game and as well as on this model here, the developers didn't bother to put any transparency on the end of these hairs, since they would never be seen by the player anyway. And as for Young Link, unfortunately there's not a whole lot to say about the character model itself. However, the stage that he represents, which is Termina Bay in Majora's Mask, had a couple things I'm willing to show you again for this video, which is the inside of this building here is fully modeled. And this is because at one point it was supposed to be that the characters could walk through the building and then the front part of the building would fade so that you could see inside. However, that idea was scrapped and all the assets were left behind. But the new thing I wanted to show you guys is these triangles of water far off into the foreground of the stage. This is very, very far out and the camera would never pan this far back. And these are really strange artifacts for a game like Super Smash Bros. Melee, as none of the other stages have anything like this. Now for Inkling, we're going to have to take the camera all the way to Splatoon and talk about what I think is the most interesting discovery from that episode, a pair of hidden hatch doors. Now this would just be armchair speculation, but it's a very good chance that this is an element that was going to be used in the story mode, as you don't typically see things textured and modeled underneath objects like this. Now, the most interesting thing about Solid Snake in Smash Bros. Isn't really attributed to Snake himself, it's more of an interesting fact to Captain Falcon that Snake is involved with, which is that the eyeballs that Snake has is shared with the one eyeball that you can discover on Captain Falcon. The shape and texture of the eye is identical to one another, making Captain Falcon a clone of the Big Boss. No, I'm just kidding. But if you wanted something that's special to Snake alone, the character model for Solid Snake in Smash Bros. Has two sets of teeth. One that's a combined texture, and one where it's separated with a top half and a bottom half. You have no idea, I am so thrilled to have Wolf back in Smash Bros. So for such a very special occasion, I did a little bit of digging here. In Star Fox Zero, you can see all the pilots inside their cockpits, but you don't really get a great look at them. Which, naturally being me, I have to know how these characters look like up close. And so the first one I'm going to show you is Wolf from Star Fox Zero. Now I gotta thank Aquago220 for hooking me up with the model here, because when you look at the cockpit model, you could see that his design in Star Fox Zero is in fact different from how it is in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, despite the claim that it is supposed to be the model from Star Fox Zero. Now, I'm not complaining, I don't really like the whole idea of a red jumpsuit, and the model in Smash Ultimate keeps what's most important, which is the eye patch, rather than the little cyborg doohickey from Assault and Smash Bros. Brawl. And speaking of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I want to show you something really interesting. Well, first of all, on the Star Fox Zero model, Wolf does not have an eye underneath his eye patch. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, yeah, why would they ever go for the effort? Well, sometimes it's pretty easy to just do symmetry with certain things, because in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, if you take the camera through here, you can see for yourself that Wolf does in fact have another eyeball underneath his cyborg eye patch. Color me a little bit surprised that I could find anything about Pichu that would be kinda interesting. Though I suppose if you put the work into anything, you can have something to talk about, and in this case we got 3 things. The first thing that I want to point out is that his character portrait on the character select screen, for when he's wearing the aviator goggles, seems to have a transparency in the lens, so much so in fact that it in fact cuts through the frames of the goggles and allows you to see his ear, which is not correct. However, on the character model, the glass is opaque, so if that was an issue before, it certainly isn't one now. Also, if we were to take the camera inside of Pichu's head, you can see that the black tuft of fur around his neck goes all the way through his neck, whereas most characters would have a hollow body underneath. And maybe I'm just the last one to notice this, but if you select green Pichu and you take a look at his backpack, it might look a little bit familiar. Yeah, that's right, it's pretty much a reused asset from Ness, only with the little pin on Ness's backpack completely removed and turned green. In regards to Pokemon Trainer, Squirtle and Ivysaur are coming back. And real quick, I'm wicked excited at the idea that I can just play as Squirtle the entire match without having to swap him out. Perfect. So let's talk about something interesting with him first. Whenever Squirtle goes inside of his shell, his head, tail, and limbs all stay within the game. They don't disappear at all. In fact, if we take the camera inside of the shell, you can see that they're shrunk down to a really tiny size, and that the end pieces of all these body parts are stretched out, since a couple of the vertices here are at normal size. And as for Ivysaur, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about here, but I figured we could remove the bulb off his back to give you a better look at that yellow part on the inside. And also, funny enough, that stalk that you can barely see on his body digs into the character model, so there's a little bit more to it than the player's allowed to see. Hey, thank you very much for watching. This is a challenge that was proposed to me by Nintendo Force, and I gotta say, it was a lot of fun to do. I managed to compile all this within 24 hours, so hope you had as much fun with it as I did. For those of you who are asking about the Super Mario Odyssey episode, it's still happening. We just decided to give it another week to bake, because some of the tool makers that are working on it said that they're gonna have some really good improvements to the camera, and it'll just make the episode that much better, so I promise you it's worth it. And man, if you are just crazy about Super Smash Bros. Right now, thanks to Ultimate being announced, I definitely recommend you check out the Super Smash Bros. Wii U episode that I did at one point, where it covered almost every single character in that game. It got a little bit crazy, and there was a lot of good discoveries there. So either way, thank you so much for checking out the video, and I hope to see you next week with Super Mario Odyssey. Take care.